again, just
They'll
like I
repeat.
did. Yeah, they'll repeat. So if they
Right.
beat you with the rock, they'll probably try the rock again next turn.
It'll be their go-to.
That's what I did. Now, obviously, what you do to counter that is to think, well, what beats the rock? The paper.
So I was using the method, and I didn't even freaking know it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what you're telling
you got me. You got
Okay.
me. Now, that's the
All
second
right.
part of this method is if the person's turn isn't successful, like you do,
Uh-huh.
they will usually switch to whatever beat them. So if they throw rock and lose to paper, they'll switch to paper on the next turn since the paper beat them.
I see.
So
I can see where a billion Chinese people have the time and manpower to spend time wasting time figuring this out.
Yeah,
But
so-
how the hell did this get on MIT's
What do you
radar?
mean waste time?
This
I
is
just figured out how to always
wasting
win.
this stuff,
Wasting time.
this stuff,
Always winning. Always be closing.
this is right from the
Always be closing.
from the MIT Technology Review. So briefly to review, if this makes any sense to
Okay.
you. when-
First off, engage a 5-year-old in a business transaction.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and first off, the first, it's a wild card. The first round, nobody knows.
Right.
I can't tell you how to win the first round, but I can tell you how to
Right.
win the second
All right,
round.
so-
You don't go all in on the first
in
game
the
ever.
in the
That's right.
hypothetical scenario that the first round is I throw scissors and you throw rock, you beat me.
Right.
Then the next round is
If I throw rock, you throw scissors, then the next round is the person who lost. You got to figure I'm
Throw
going to
what
throw
beat you.
rock
right.
again.
The
you
winner's
wanna-
going to stay put. The loser's going to switch.
Right. And in that situation, if it's not successful, yeah, switch to whatever beat you.
Sweet.
And
Has,
so-
has MIT stepped up to the whole rock, paper, scissors, Spock, lizard, pentaveret yet?
that is going to be in next month.
Have yeah, that's okay because that's where we're evolving to.
Right.
Rock, paper, scissors is yesterday's news.
Just a little tip. You can try it out and let me know. And we're going to move on to much more important things because we are joined by an esteemed guest. And thank you so much for coming in. Stephen Tobolowsky has acted in more than 200 movies and TV shows.
And he hates this song, everybody.
His IMDb page is one of the largest in Hollywood history. And recently, he was kind enough to join us on the phone with memories of Harold Ramis, and a great comic actor and director that Stephen worked with on Groundhog Day. This morning, he's in our studio to talk the Tobolowsky Files and a movie he's making. This very popular podcast you'll find on iTunes and NPR stations such as right here in Seattle at KUOW 94.9 FM. Tomorrow night, you can be a part of the Tobolowsky Files live with Stephen. He'll shoot at 8 p.m. at the Moore Theater, and we'll have all the information on how you can get there and get involved at bobrivers.com. Stephen Tobolowsky, welcome to Seattle and the Bob Rivers Show. Thank you for getting up and coming in this morning.
Thank you. Rock.
Uh,
I'm going with rock.
all right, let's try it right here. Real
Okay,
quick. You
ready?
Yep.
Here we go.
I
I had paper.
I hit paper too
Oh, so
because
what
I
happened?
I knew you were going.
See what I did
knew
here?
I thought you would tell me a story.
See what I did?
What'd
I
you
went
do?
lizard. Lizard eats paper.
Ah, okay. All right.
Oh,
We'll
Lord.
get into that next week when
Okay.
MIT gets around to figuring this out.
That's a little trick. So now I know you're making a movie. It's probably not about that, right?
No, it's not. This is, boy, it's the new paradigm. We're jumping off the cliff. We're doing the, what do you call base
jumping,
diving?
base jumping, yeah.
Because we did this Kickstarter movie. David Chin and I have been doing the podcast for like 4 or 5 years, and David was saying, let's try to move now into film. And so we opened up a Kickstarter program, and we made our goal. Kickstarter is kind of like, if you don't know what that is out there, it's kind of like a bad relationship, is because if you ask for too much money, like to get your thing made, you won't get anything.
Right.
So you have to ask for as little as you think you can possibly get. And we got it.
And more.
And more. So we are going to be at the Moore. And what we're going to do is we're going to film one of, I'm going to be doing 2 big stories, I guess, wow, in just a couple days, right? Saturday. Oh, my goodness.
Tomorrow.
So,
Yeah.
so anybody in the theater, you will be part of the movie. And I'm very excited because these are 2 stories that mean a lot to me. And I feel like I owe it to about 1,000 people have contributed money to make this happen. And all those who were in Seattle are going to be in the theater tomorrow, and I thank them and I honor them, and we're going to have a great show for them.
Are these stories from your personal life, or?
all the stories I tell are true. I have two rules for telling stories. One is all the stories are true, and all the stories happen to me. And the reason I came up with that formula is that I always learn through many bad choices along the way that true trumps clever any day of the week. And the stories are about me because I have been burned so many times by the notoriously unreliable friend of a friend and the genetic antecedent of that, the internet, with the rock, paper, scissors.
Right.
Yeah, so if I tell a story that happened to me, at least I can verify that it was true in that way.
Well, I'm going to write down that true trumps clever because I'm a lot more honest than I am clever, and I mean that right there is a great tip to go through life, really.
Well, I'm thinking, if I tell a story that at least from my truth is a funny thing,
Right.
because my truth is not your truth, and we could have been. Every attorney knows that the most unreliable information is eyewitness testimony, and so I only pretend that it's my truth. But if I tell something the way I saw it, and I try to be as truthful as I can, then there is a greater opportunity that someone in the audience will hear what happened in their life. And in a way, my story becomes their story. I got a great email just yesterday from someone who's training for the triathlon in Utah. And he said for the last 2 years, as he's been training, he's been listening to my stories from the Tobolowsky files on his iPod because... And then he started bringing up various characters in the story that, like my Beth, he thought about his Beth. And my father, he thought about his father. And for some reason, my stories were able to translate into his life, and he saw an accurate reflection. And that is what I'm trying to do.
Well, your life has been fascinating. The Hollywood part of your life, the part that I read about that really fascinated me, and a story that I'd love to hear, if you wanted to say a little bit about it, is your life in music. You were the first guy ever to record Stevie Ray Vaughan when he was a little kid, from what I understand.
Yeah,
you guys...
well, I was in a very bad group. We were terrible. It was before the era of garage bands, because in that time in the world, people used their garages for cars and power tools. We were kind of like a living room band or hallway after school band, but we were chosen to be one of 5 Dallas bands to record 2 songs on an album, which they were going to call A New High, H-I. And this was back in the late 60s. So we're on our way to the recording studio, and the guy who was the head of our group, Bobby Foreman, who actually had talent, Bobby was good. He ended up in the New Christie Minstrels. He said, well, Stephen, I got this kid from our neighborhood to play lead guitar on our songs. He's 14 years old, but he's really good, Stevie Vaughan. And I go, Bobby, oh, come on. Why do we need some little kid playing guitar on our song? And Bobby said, Stephen, be quiet. This kid's really good, and he's going to make us seem like we know what we're doing. So we got into the studio, and there was Stevie Ray sitting there with his Gibson with the dual humbucking pickups, and he said, hey, guys, so you want to just play me what you're going to do so I can figure out what I'm going to do? So we played about 3.5 seconds of our song, and Stevie goes, okay, stop. Okay, I know what I'm going to do. So we laid down all the tracks of our songs, our 2 songs in 2 passes. This is Low Blow Productions. And then the engineer said, son, you want to try a lead on your guitar? He says, sure. He says, the song's kind of rinky-dink, so what if I started with kind of a rinky-dink lead and then went into a good lead? They go, sure, try it. Stevie got up and it was hilarious. He did like a bad lead and then segued into a burning, scorching, ripping lead. Everybody stopped. And the engineer kind of tapped on the glass and says, that was good, son. You got another one in you? And Stevie says, sure, man. He got up and did like another blazing lead. Now, I am a fly on the wall at this point, and our jaws are pretty much touching the ground. And I'm looking through the double glass windows, and I see the engineer calling down the hall. Just the pantomime and more adults coming into the room and looking. Son, try that again. And Stevie does another lead, which was amazing, where he was doing the bass and then jumping up to the treble and the bass and his signature kind of leads.
Oh, yeah.
And they go, got one more? And there was, all I could say is, there was a holy feeling in the room. And all of us were dead quiet because I think, looking with my adult brain now, it was as close as we had ever been to seeing the real thing, the true thing. It was the closest that we ever been to that fire that you want to call genius. And I don't know if you have any time for an addendum to the story.
We had, not only do we have time for an addendum, but I think we might have tracked down that track. So go ahead.
Oh no!
Go ahead. Yeah, then we're going to listen to this moment, but go ahead. Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Okay. About I guess 18 years after we recorded A New High, which vanished. I was doing a movie in Memphis, Tennessee called Great Balls of Fire with Stevie Ray's brother, Jimmy Vaughn.
Jerry Lee Lewis's story, yeah.
So Jimmy Vaughn and I, after we would shoot, I would go watch him rehearse the Fabulous Thunderbirds because he was playing with the Thunderbirds at the time. And then Jimmy and I would go out and party, which is Memphis code for drinking and playing music all night long. And we went into Kiva Recording Studios where Eric Clapton had recorded some tracks for Layla. And we had the run of the place because of Great Balls of Fire, because doing the movie. Jimmy and I played around till about dawn, and then we left, and we thought, let's get some breakfast. And we stopped at this little diner in Memphis, and the place was empty except for a guy at the counter, and then over by the window was Stevie Ray. Now, I hadn't seen Stevie Ray since we did A New High. And Jimmy and Stevie Ray had kind of a falling out between the two of them. He goes, it's my brother. So the three of us go over, and I go, Stevie Ray, hey, remember, it's me, Stephen Tobolowsky, cast of thousands. Remember we did A New High? Bing!
Sorry, couldn't help myself. I could not help myself.
Stevie gives me the stink eye and goes, man, we don't talk about that here. We don't talk about that. We sat down at that breakfast, and that is where Jimmy and Stevie Ray began to reconcile. And Jimmy says, man, all I want to do is play music with you. And Stevie says, bro, that's all I want to do with you. And they plotted at that table to start doing an album which became Family Style.
Right.
Which became the beautiful album Family Style.
That was TikTok People, I think, or something was on there. That was a big hit off that album.
Yeah, it was a good news, bad news situation because I lost my drinking buddy in Jimmy Vaughn. But whenever we finished shooting in the afternoon, Jimmy would go out with Stevie Ray, and they would work on the tracks for Family Style. The guys became very close, and Stevie Ray got invited by Eric Clapton, his idol, to come up and play at the rock concert up in, I think it was Minnesota somewhere, and he said to Jimmy Vaughn, he said, Jimmy, you want to come up and play, and the three of us will play with Clapton? And he goes, sure. So they went, they played the rock concert there. They finished the concert. Stevie Ray jumps on the helicopter. Jimmy jumps on the helicopter, and Jimmy's wife, Connie, jumps on the helicopter. And the helicopter pilot says, excuse me, ma'am, we got too much weight. You're going to have to get off. And Jimmy Vaughn says, where my wife goes, I go. And he jumped off of the helicopter. And according to Jimmy, the helicopter never made height. It got up to about 50 feet and then crashed and exploded. And that was the end of Stevie. And when I saw Jimmy after the movie, he said, putting together Family Style became his act of mourning for his brother. And I was always thinking, if you listen to that album, it's got everything that rock and roll is joy and pain and the desire to play all night long.
Well, just this week, Stevie Ray Vaughan was honored. In Austin City Limits has started a Hall of Fame. Willie Nelson in there. This is the first class, and I can't think of, you're from Texas, but two greater Texans to kick this thing off than Willie Nelson and Stevie Ray Vaughan to put in there. And
awesome.
And we do have, this is the first stuff Stevie Ray Vaughan ever recorded in his life.
And the last stuff Stephen Tobolowsky ever recorded in his
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
A milestone moment for both.
Do you put out a public warning for this kind of thing?
At 14 years old, and you can let us know. Pedro, I have not heard this. He tracked it down, so let us know if
this is awesome,
if
by
this
the
is the
way.
legit stuff here. Stevie Ray Vaughan.
I'm packing up my boots, I'm loading up my gun. I won't be coming home again
Here comes the goofy lead.
Here we go.
And soon he's going to switch.
Yeah.
14 years old.
Wow.
You can hear the jaws hit the floor. You can if you listen closely. Hey, I got before you move off of that. That's a great story. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Describe the hair of an 18-year-old Stephen Tobolowsky at that moment. I mean, I can imagine you as a rock and rolling kid, teenager in Texas.
No, but I was very kind of. We were at a high school where they used to measure to make sure your hair didn't go over your collar. So my hair was just kind of like a thatched roof in kind of valley. So if you imagine like just this clump of stuff on top of my head, and I remember walking down the sidewalk and looking at my shadow on the ground with the wind blowing in Texas, and I thought, my head looks like one of those dandelions that you see, just like all of this flowing kind of stuff, and now it looks kind of like a tortoise. The shadow of my head looks like my turtle.
Shame nobody's measuring now, because it would never be a problem.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Stephen Tobolowsky. He's in the studio. This guy is you know him as Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day, selling Bill Murray insurance, recording with Stevie Ray Vaughan, the first recording session. I mean, you're a guy who's just, I guess you're blessed in a way of just, you know, do you believe in a higher power, that there's something that kind of.
Oh, absolutely. I do for sure. And my new book, you didn't know this. No, you really didn't. Rock, Paper, Scissors. You did not know this, but my first book was Dangerous Animals Club, and Simon & Schuster asked me to do a second book about faith, and it's called My Adventures with God. And the thing about everybody, whether you're religious or not religious, believes in something invisible, even if it's luck, even if it's like not stepping on a crack on the sidewalk. Everybody believes in something. Even cats believe in supper time. I mean, everybody believes in something. And the problem always with faith is everybody thinks it's about algebra, about finding x, but it's not. It's calculus, and it's mapping the curve, because it changes, the definition changes through our life. When we're little, we get all these stories, and you imagine God with a beard and all that kind of stuff. And then during your life, you have a few run-ins with the Grim Reaper. I mean, I've had a few. Held hostage at gunpoint in a grocery store, broke my neck riding on a horse on the side of an active volcano in Iceland.
Bad idea.
Man.
Bad idea, yeah. Mixing tequila and whiskey, not a good idea.
No.
So you have these run-ins, and your idea changes, and then you have children, and your idea I had open heart surgery 2 years ago. Your idea changes along the way. And I had this kind of miracle happen to me. Again, it's the way you define what God is, or what you define what faith is, but I had this injury. It broke my neck. The doctor told me I had a fatal injury, is what he said, word for word.
So that's it. The fatal is that's you're done.
Which is a terrible thing to tell your patient.
Yeah.
Especially when he's alive. It's a terrible misuse of the word fatal, I think.
Yeah.
You're dead.
You're dead.
You are dead.
Well, then you don't need my check. So I'm healing, and I'm in my brace, and it takes like 3.5 months to heal. And at the very end of this 3.5 months, I get a script from my agent for a TV show called Glee, some musical about high school.
Right.
And I'm sitting in my backyard, and as I'm reading it, I see through my peripheral vision all of these flashes of purple and gold and green, and I look up, and the back of my tree is covered with parrots. wild parrots. And my mind goes back to 35 years when I first came out to Los Angeles, and my friend told me that there was a terrible fire in a pet store, supposedly. And the owner of the pet store got out all the dogs and cats, but he couldn't save the birds. And he released all of his birds into the wild, and they said the apocryphal tale is that somewhere in the city of Los Angeles is a flock of wild parrots. Well, not only was the apocryphal true, but they were living in the back of my own tree.
Wow.
So I'm reading the script of Glee, and while I'm reading Glee, I see a shadow pass over the script, and I don't look up, and I go like, I don't have to look up because I know from the shape and the size of the shadow and the speed, I know it's one of my wild parrots coming back to live in the back of my tree.
Feral parrots.
Yeah. And while I'm reading, I'm thinking like, well, you know, that's probably the way it is with all miracles. It's easy to recognize the shadow once you've seen the real thing. And I went, whoa, what? Yeah. And I stood up and I looked at my backyard, and it was covered with sunlight and shadows. And my whole life, I had been one of these people that thought of shadows as just a kind of part of the darkness. And I started saying to myself, wait a minute, what if one of these shadows, just one of them, is something like my parrot, a miracle that went unobserved? It could be anywhere, anytime, and it completely changed the way I viewed the world.
Wow.
I started looking out now and seeing all I know of the world is what I'm able to see, but there's so much I can't comprehend. And it is the distance between what I comprehend and what I can't comprehend is God. You know, we cannot comprehend the infinite. And no one ever has been able to comprehend the infinite. And it was Pascal, who was a great mathematician, who had a terrible illness, I guess, in like 1650, 1660, that turned his attentions into proving the existence of God. And he had this very question, and he said, well, we cannot understand infinity. The mind cannot understand this. But the mind can understand the number one. And we understand 1 + 1. And if you could understand 1 + 1, then the human mind can understand and comprehend adding ones forever. And that is the way we have to approach the idea of believing in the invisible, believing in something bigger than ourselves. It's difficult to do.
Yeah.
It's not easy. But again, we do it every day unconsciously in so many things we do.
And there are so many things that we just can't explain. And I agree with you 100%. And I want to read that book. I'm writing 2 things down. Truth Trumps Clever. And what was the name of the book, and when is it going to be published?
Well, that's a good question. It is My Adventures with God.
My Adventures with God.
It's going into Simon & Schuster in December, which means, according to the kind of sliding scale of massive publication, it could be out the Christmas following.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's I hope that I think I'll still be needing that sort of thing a couple years down the line.
But the book is like Dangerous Animals Club in that it's not that serious of a it's funny, but funny, but kind of not funny sometimes, but generally the stories are funny.
Well, Stephen, you're a great comic actor, obviously a great storyteller, and that's what you're going to get at the Moore Theater tomorrow night. If you want to be a part of Stephen Tobolowsky's movie that he's going to shoot at the Moore Theater, we will give a link to tickets at bobrivers.com. And thank you so much for coming in and sharing the music of Stevie Ray and those memories. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stephen Tobolowsky on the Bob Rivers Show. We'll be right back. If you're a golfer,